Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure for me and the team to be here, and it's really nice to actually see what other folks are attempting to do and with Toda and to learn um, and understand the synergies. So far, records is so important, especially when it comes to healthcare. I've actually had that thought and that idea a long time ago, and I called Tufi. Maybe it was 2003. I called him from Dubai, and I told him, "Hey, have you ever taken this medication in your lifetime?" And he said to me, "No. Well, why are you asking?" And I told him, "They just figured out that if you've taken that medication, you have a huge risk of dying after 3 months." And he said, "Dude, what are you saying? You're freaking me out." And I told him, "Don't worry. I'm just trying to sell you an idea that is all about records, healthcare records in one place that enables your doctors to access when they really need it, that tells them what your history was." At that time, it was impossible to do, and I've actually stored my data on Google Healthcare for a few years until they got sued by so many people because of that, the whole data issues and people hacking it. But now with Toda and blockchain is possible. And the other one, which is donations. I've lived in Africa for a year, and a lot of African nations actually count on donations for their existence. And it's amazing to see this happening in this space, because more people will trust it and more people will be able to really donate, and that will make a big impact. So let me start by asking a question first. I was hoping that we wouldn't have the name of the company, but I guess that gave up my... I want to ask you a question thinking about, in a context of humanity. And then when I ask you the question, the first thing that comes to your mind, if you can answer it, write it down on a piece of paper, or remember it, and I'll just go randomly and ask you what you thought. And the question is, what do you think is one element or one thing that is so important for our existence in this planet? First thing that comes to your mind, anything. 3 seconds, write it down or remember it. I'm going to ask you randomly. Would you like to tell me what you thought it was? Come on, man. Water. Okay.
Trees.
Food, trees, air. Go ahead. Okay. Well, all of this, air, tree, food, and land is very important. By the way, they're very important. They're our first basic physiological needs, and guess what? They do not exist without land. First you have to have land, and then you get all of these first basic needs. Imagine if the world was like Venice. The entire world was like Venice. I mean, would you go to Venice to visit Venice if the entire world was like Venice? It was a trick question, because if the world was like Venice, we wouldn't exist. If planet was filled with water, we don't have air, we don't have food. So I'm trying to demonstrate how important land is, and that's why we're working on Land 32, which I have the pleasure to present to you today. So I'm going to go through quickly our mission statement, which is to create a secure... Can I see this on this screen, by the way? Sasha? Can I see it on this screen? No? So our mission statement is to create a secure and sustainable universal system to unlock the tremendous value that is locked in land through an autonomous, inclusive, and frictionless marketplace, eventually and ultimately contributing to human progress and advancing societies towards financial stability and prosperity. The former is what wakes me up every day, is my passion and what drives me. And I understand that in order to get there, we have to start somewhere, which is building this amazing frictionless marketplace to unlock the tremendous value of land. Quick facts about land. Like I said, we can't exist without it. And it has been society's most valuable, tangible possessions for thousands of years, if not millions. It is indestructible. It's unstealable. You can't actually steal it, so you don't need to lock it anywhere in a safe. It's timeless, it's tangible, we can see it, we can touch it, we can step on it, and it's identifiable. We have a consensus on where each small portion of land is through the longitude and latitude, and that consensus has been there for more than 400 years. Most importantly, land has long-term stable value, and it's scarce and finite. And that makes it valuable. And how valuable is land? So I looked at the 2017 GDP number for all the countries around the world. I took the first 9 largest producers, and I started with Canada being the 10th largest economy onwards. I added them all up, and the value of all their production in 2017 added up to $28 trillion. Compared that to the estimated value of the United States land is $30 trillion. So just the land that is in the United States is worth more than the entire 180 countries around the world. That gives you an idea how valuable land is. Talking about Canada and being the 10th largest economy in the world, 40 square kilometers of land in the United States is worth more than the Canadian GDP, and that's Manhattan. Manhattan is worth about $1.8 trillion of land. So what are the problems? Though land is so important, it is not seamlessly integrated into the financial market, and therefore making it so difficult to reach and to monetize. It's illiquid, and it's not optimally utilized. If you think about the land in Canada, more than 89% of land is owned by the government. Here in California, 50% of land is government owned. And I'm not saying that to critique these two governments. They may be the best land managers around the world, but I'm just stating the opportunity. These problems make it more difficult for real estate developers, landowners, managers, and governments to optimally utilize their land. And this is exacerbated by the monetary system that we have in place. As you know, the monetary system is a tool that has been there for more than 5,000 years. It's evolved and regressed, and leaving us today with a centralized system that is prone for manipulation, most of the times for the few on the expense of the many. And the way we produce, with the way we create currency, is through a debit system. It's through credit every time we issue a loan. That's how we're creating currency. And that makes it inflationary, which is a big problem, is about to explode. And the promise of the monetary system of financial stability and global prosperity is broken. All of this make it even more difficult for real estate developers, for farmers, for agriculture lands, for governments to finance the land, to find the right financing, whether it's debt or other. And you can see here by some of the statistics in the United States, more than 45% of land transactions are financed by equity. That tells you how low the availability of debt is in the marketplace. And most landowners state land financing as the #1 hurdle issue for their transactions for buying lands or for developing lands. So the solution that we're proposing is to digitally capture land, small divisions of it, by the square centimeter, and create a cryptographic representation of every square centimeter. Every square centimeter, remember, has a longitude and latitude. That will then turn into an exchangeable store of value. If you remember the slide which I mentioned before that had the attributes and the characteristics of land, one of them was it's immovable. That makes it a weak candidate of a medium of exchange, because you cannot just take land and transport it and give it and say, now give me a coffee or something. But now, when we create that cryptographic representation on Toda protocol, we can exchange that value. And what is important is that it is on Toda, which is a scalable and efficient blockchain. Today, we are going to present to you the real estate developer use case and how real estate developers can benefit from our lane 32. How do I switch there? Thanks. Thank you. So here we're taking an example of a developer who is already signed in. The developer has already determined and found an amazing piece of land, centrally located, irreplaceable location, and they want to build a mixed-use development. They're going to have a trophy asset right there, and they want to raise $185 million to buy this land. They have the options to decide what the price is going to be. The time frame for the campaign is going to be 1 month or 3 months, and they can have options of what are they going to remunerate the investors with. Is it going to be an annual interest? Is it going to be a buyback loan? Or is it going to be made in a format of a lease of a land, and each investor will be part owner of the lease? In this case, the developer decided to take the buyback option with 6% appreciation on an annual basis. And then here are the details of the land, which is 10,000 square meter, giving us about 100 million land units. Now, they launched the campaign, and you can see right now we're still in the first day of the campaign. This is the land. It's divided by the square meter, and every square meter is divided by the square centimeter. And a few weeks later, they are at 57% to reach their goal. And this here land represents the lights, essentially the difference in tone of green represents how many lands have been already purchased. And by the way, the system gives this randomly, so I'll explain a little bit later when we look at it from the investor's point of view. The developer has finalized their campaign. It was very successful. They reached their goal of $185 million. The smart contracts already transacted. The land is exchanged, and essentially the old owner now has transferred it to the new owners, who are the land investors. And now we can look at it from the point of view of the investor. This individual here has bought 1 square meter of land, which, by the way, in the past he didn't have the opportunity to do so, because investment in land has a high barrier to entry. You couldn't have bought 1 square meter before and participate in the wealth creation and benefit from it in your community, but now you can. And you can see how this individual's ownership of land is dispersed randomly throughout the plot of land. And if we click on any of the square meters, where are we? You can see how, well, maybe you can't see because it's behind the desk, but you can see how each square meter is divided into all of the square centimeters, and then each centimeter has the longitude and latitude coordinates that is now attached to a hash number, which gives it a unique identity that is on the blockchain. This investor, by the way, logged in about a year later after the development and decided that the market value for the land is where is it? Is exchanged? Where's the market value? If you can help me with the land. Oh, it's getting cut. So here, the market price of land, the ongoing market value is been traded at a premium for what the buyback equal to the buyback is. So this individual decides to sell some of these units, and he realized some profit. So you can see that here, land is randomly selected from this plot of land, and then each individual owns lands randomly. What happens to this plot of land, all of this becomes fungible. It doesn't matter whether you own this square centimeter or that or the one on the top. It becomes like stocks in the company. So you may wonder, okay, so how is that helping give society some financial stability and global prosperity. How can I exit from this story again? What we are trying to do is give land. Thanks. So what we're trying to do is create this cryptographic representation of land by the square centimeter, because it makes it fungible, and make land a stable medium of exchange. We've just demonstrated how important valuable land is, and therefore it's a store of value. And with time, it becomes a unit of account. All of these, by the way, being the functions of a currency. So the market size is huge. I'll go through this quickly because I know I'm running out of time. But we have land financings, land transactions, sales, debt, leases, unutilized land by the government that can be put in the system. Our revenue model is license fees and success fees, and then we standardize and we scale. And we are going to go with B2B and B2C for our strategy to penetrate the market. We can go to existing crowd funds, existing commercial real estate developers, land funds, governments, etc. And what is important to remember is that during the entire cycle of this development, investors who bought land, they have it on their phone, they have the units on their phone. And what we're creating is an exchange of land, so making it important, making it easy for people to finance, making it liquid. Now you can have individuals like you and me who can invest $20,000 in land that previously they couldn't invest. You can allow a land developer to go into non-traditional financing and finance without having to go through the current intermediaries that sometimes is cost prohibitive or even unavailable for financing. So I will like to leave you with one thing that is very important. If you look at this graph, you can see the purchasing power of the US dollar from the 1930 to 2010. And if you had $100 that you kept with you under the mattress and you didn't use it throughout these about 70 years or so, you realize that it lost almost 98% of its value. Whereas in contrast, a piece of land in the United States that you purchased in 1979 costs about $11,000, whereas in 2015, it would have costed $97,000, so almost 10 times more. So which one is a better store of value? I'll let you decide, but I believe it's land. And given all the problems that we had and the crises that we had, I can tell you that winter is coming and Christmas is coming. And if you have kids or nephews or nieces and you'd like to give them some money, that you put it in their Christmas stockings next to the chimney. Make sure you don't put it so close to the chimney because they will burn. And second, tell them that they have to spend it this year, otherwise it's going to lose its value. Otherwise, you can buy them Lane 32 units because they will have much better value in the future. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm available to take any questions or later. I don't know if we have time for questions or maybe later. Yes. Thank you. By the way, if you have any question that is technologically linked or with a technological focus, I will ask Dan or some of the team to answer it.
No, this is more business-wise. So the located development, really interesting. Is that an actual deal that happened, or is that kind of a hypothetical?
It's both. It's actually a deal that I worked on myself in 2009, and that deal took a long time to actually materialize because we were just coming out from the global recession. But it is, the values are correct, the location is not, but the land dimensions are correct, and we just played around with it a little bit. Yeah. But essentially, this one was just an example of what a land developer can do, and this happened to be urban and in the middle of the city. But this can be applicable in a rural environment. It can be applicable to farms, and that's why it's so interesting for you and I to talk. What is so important to mention here is that, sorry, but you didn't even ask a question.
No, that was the question.
Okay.
It was an actual real hypothetical kind of
Yeah. Yes. So what is so important for me to just really reiterate is that, okay, you can wonder, is this like an exaggerated crowdfunding platform? And definitely it is not. Though we can do what a crowdfunding does, but we're creating a marketplace where once you have 10 plots of lands, 50, 100 or 1,000, especially when governments start putting their land into the platform, all of these aggregates plots of land, together they create an aggregate value. That becomes a unit of account. All of these lands together will have one unit of account, so in the future you can transact on that basis, you can count on that unit. It's stable, and it's backed by land, and during the entire cycle, that unit of account and that store of value becomes exchangeable easily. Not only between land, but you can use it to buy coffee with it, and most importantly, there's no extraction of wealth. We're not going through intermediary. Toda allows us to have this exchange between two parties, whether they're exchanging land or anything else, without an intermediary. And that is so important because now there's no more extraction of value. You don't need an exchange center to exchange. Any other questions? It's a very good question. In fact, they stopped the gold standard because they wanted to print as much as they wanted to fund the war without having to back it by anything. Otherwise, they cannot produce all of the weapons. If you remember the slide where I mentioned the value of the United States land is about $30 trillion, do you have an idea how much we have so far mined in value gold? Throughout history, so far we've mined $7 trillion worth of gold. So the reason why governments decided to stop the gold standard is because they wanted to print more money, and they don't necessarily want to back it by something that is tangible, that has utility, or that is valuable. Now, if that were to continue, or if they had more gold and they continued working on it, or if blockchain existed back in the days, they would have probably linked it to land, because now we are creating, and to go back to your question, what is their incentive? Government of Canada has about 8 million square kilometers of land available to them. They own that on behalf of the people, and they have a duty to use that optimally for their own people and for the world. The Canadian government is really good at doing that. So what they can do with it, they can upload it on the system, and now it becomes fungible, it becomes units, and now it becomes something that you can lend to someone else, or you can issue as a medium of exchange. It could be called currency, and then other people can trust it better because it's backed by land, and it has real value, it's frictionless, and it's exchangeable. We can talk more about this because this is where our passion is, this is where we're heading, and this is where we see Lane 32 actually making a lot of difference in the world, and that's where we're going to give the world stability, financial stability and prosperity through that, more than the private developments. Very good question. All right, well, I'm going to be available here for later. Please come and ask me questions, or the team. Thank you very much, by the way, for the team for doing a fantastic job in the last few weeks. Thank you, everybody.